The morning sun cast harsh shadows across the desolate landscape of Grit Valley, where an exhausted young male lion struggled through his final hours of desperation. This magnificent creature, once a proud member of a thriving pride, had been brutally expelled from his ancestral territory after a violent confrontation with dominant males who saw him as a threat to their authority. His golden coat, now matted with dirt and scarred from countless battles, bore witness to weeks of relentless wandering through unforgiving terrain where food was scarce and water even scarcer. The lion's emaciated frame revealed the stark reality of his situation, ribs protruding sharply beneath his tattered fur, eyes sunken deep into their sockets, and legs trembling with each labored step across the scorched earth. His stomach, hollow from days without sustenance, cramped painfully as he caught the faint scent of fish drifting from a small lake nestled within the valley's embrace. His once powerful roars had been reduced to weak, pitiful groans that echoed across the empty valley, calling out to a world that seemed to have forgotten his existence. As the day wore on, the lion's movements became increasingly feeble until he could barely lift his head above the muddy surface. His breathing grew shallow and labored, each breath a monumental effort that required more strength than his depleted body could provide. The weight of the mud that had accumulated in his mane pulled his neck down, making it nearly impossible to keep his airways clear. Flies began to gather around his motionless form, sensing the approaching end of a once mighty predator. The sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red that seemed to mock the lion's dire circumstances. Darkness crept across the landscape like a shroud, bringing with it the bone-chilling cold of the African night. Various birds and small mammals passed by the trapped lion throughout the day, some pausing momentarily to observe his plight before continuing on their way, indifferent to his suffering. Henry's small vessel had been his constant companion throughout his years of solitude, serving not only as a means of survival, but also as his primary connection to the natural world that had become his sanctuary. The boat, though old and showing signs of wear, was meticulously maintained and equipped with everything he needed for his fishing expeditions. On this particular morning, he had also attached a small waterproof camera to his well-worn hat, intending to document the peaceful moments he experienced on the water, a hobby he had recently taken up to help preserve the memories of his simple but meaningful existence. The morning air was crisp and still as Henry pushed his boat away from the makeshift dock he had constructed years earlier. The lake's surface was like a mirror, reflecting the gradually lightening sky and the silhouettes of the trees that surrounded this hidden oasis. As he rowed toward his favorite fishing spot in the center of the lake, Henry felt the familiar sense of peace that had drawn him to this place and kept him here through all seasons and circumstances. He had been casting his line for perhaps an hour, enjoying the meditative rhythm of fishing and the gradual warming of the sun on his weathered face, when an unusual sound drifted across the water. At first, he dismissed it as the call of some distant bird, or perhaps the movement of branches in the morning breeze, but as he listened more carefully, he realized that this was something entirely different, a sound of distress that spoke to his experienced ranger's instincts. The groaning, labored breathing that reached his ears was unmistakably that of a large animal in severe distress. Henry's heart began to race as he quickly reeled in his fishing line and took up the oars, propelling his boat toward the source of the sound with urgent strokes that sent ripples across the previously calm water. As he approached the reed-lined shore approximately 100 meters away, the sounds of suffering became more distinct and heartbreaking. Carefully parting the tall reeds with his oar, Henry peered through the vegetation and was confronted with a sight that would remain etched in his memory forever. There, trapped in the treacherous mud of the shoreline, lay a young male lion whose condition was so dire that Henry initially feared he might already be too late. The magnificent animal was barely recognizable beneath the thick coating of mud that covered most of his body, and only the subtle movement of his eyes indicated that life still flickered within his failing form. For several long moments, Henry sat motionless in his boat, overwhelmed by the enormity of what he was witnessing, In all his years as a ranger, he had encountered numerous wildlife emergencies, but nothing had prepared him for the raw emotion he felt upon seeing this proud creature reduced to such a helpless state. The lion's eyes, though dimmed by exhaustion and pain, still held a spark of intelligence and awareness that seemed to pierce straight through to Henry's soul. Without hesitation, Henry maneuvered his boat as close to the shore as possible and carefully stepped out onto the muddy bank. The unstable ground immediately began to give way beneath his feet, and he had to move with extreme caution to avoid becoming trapped himself. As he approached the lion, he spoke in soft, reassuring tones, hoping to calm the animal and prevent any panic that might worsen the situation. The rescue operation that followed was both physically demanding and emotionally draining. Henry had to work methodically, using a combination of ropes, planks, and sheer determination to gradually extract the lion from the mud's grip. The process took several hours and required multiple attempts, as the suction created by the thick mud made it extremely difficult to gain any meaningful progress. Throughout the ordeal, Henry found himself talking continuously to the lion, offering words of encouragement and reassurance as much for his own benefit as for the animals. When Henry finally succeeded in pulling the lion's upper body free from the mud, both man and beast were utterly exhausted. The lion, though no longer trapped, was far too weak to support his own weight and had to be carefully lifted into the boat, a task that pushed Henry's aging body to its absolute limits. As they made their way back across the lake, Henry kept one hand on the lion's muddy flank, monitoring his breathing and offering what comfort he could during the journey to shore. Back at his cabin, Henry worked tirelessly to clean the mud from the lion's coat and tend to his various wounds and injuries. The warm water from his garden hose revealed the true extent of the animal's emaciation. His ribs were clearly visible beneath his matted fur, and numerous cuts and scrapes covered his body, telling the story of his recent struggles for survival. Throughout the cleaning process, the lion remained remarkably calm, as if he understood that this strange human was his salvation rather than a threat. The transformation was remarkable to witness. As the layers of mud were washed away, the lion's natural beauty began to emerge, revealing the magnificent golden coat and powerful build that marked him as one of nature's most impressive predators. Though still weak and underweight, there was something in his eyes that suggested a renewed will to live, a spark of hope that had been rekindled by this unexpected act of compassion. Henry provided the lion with fresh meat from his small refrigerator and clean water, watching with satisfaction as the animal slowly began to eat. The trust that developed between them during those first crucial hours was profound and immediate. The lion seemed to understand that he owed his life to this solitary human who had appeared at his darkest moment like a guardian angel. Recognizing that the lion needed professional veterinary care and proper rehabilitation facilities, Henry contacted the Karoo Wildlife Reserve, where experienced staff could provide the specialized treatment and long-term care that would be necessary for a complete recovery. The decision to call for help was difficult for Henry, as he had grown unexpectedly attached to the magnificent creature during their brief time together, but he knew it was the right thing to do for the animal's well-being. When the reserve's rescue team arrived several hours later, they were amazed by both the lion's improved condition and the bond that had clearly formed between him and his rescuer. The young ranger who led the team praised Henry's quick thinking and proper care, noting that without his intervention, the lion would certainly have perished in the mud. The animal was carefully transported to the reserve in a specialized transport cage, but not before Henry had one final moment to say goodbye, gently stroking the lion's forehead through the bars and whispering words of encouragement for the journey ahead. At the Karoo Wildlife Reserve, the lion was given the name Hope in honor of the second chance at life he had received through Henry's intervention. Under the expert care of veterinarians and wildlife specialists, Hope made a remarkable recovery, gradually regaining his strength and returning to his natural behaviors. Within a month, He was healthy enough to be housed in a semi-wild enclosure where he could begin the process of readjusting to life in a more natural environment. The story of Hope's rescue spread throughout the local community and beyond, becoming a powerful symbol of the difference that one person's compassion can make in the life of another creature. For Henry, the experience marked a turning point in his long period of self-imposed isolation. Though he continued to live alone in his cabin by the lake, he no longer felt the crushing loneliness that had plagued him for so many years. The memory of those golden eyes, looking at him with trust and gratitude, provided a warmth that filled the empty spaces in his heart. Hope thrived in his new environment at the reserve, eventually growing into a magnificent adult lion whose presence commanded respect from both staff and visitors. His story served as an inspiration to conservationists and animal lovers around the world, demonstrating the incredible resilience of wildlife and the profound impact that human kindness can have on the natural world.